Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the podcast. We have our celebrity guest again, Mustafa.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love you on here, Mustafa.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice
We know,
meeting you too, Nick.
yeah, we know you don't get any love outside, so we're gonna love you on here.
Oh, I need the love, man. I need the love. I lack the love in my life, so I need the love.
Yeah, so today's goal of the podcast is UFC 249 is coming up, and I'm a nice UFC fan, so
Yes.
I just want it got me thinking as to like what the comparisons between like UFC and something else I watched growing up, WWE are, or like the wrestling is.
Yes.
And this is basically an extension off of what an episode I did with Carl a
Hmm.
few weeks ago.
Yes.
And I didn't know who else to talk to about this other than Mustafa, our celebrity.
Oh my God.
Um, so yeah, I have him on the show now to discuss a few topics with us
Okay.
and share his wisdom.
Yeah.
So yeah, before we start, Mustafa, do you just want to give us a brief resume of your qualifications in wrestling, just so we get an understanding of your comprehension on the topic?
Okay, so I'm not just a very crazy wrestling fan, even though I have the Undertaker's T-shirt right here. So love Undertaker. But yeah, I am a professional wrestling promoter. I founded the NSWA, which is the North Star Wrestling Alliance. I have worked with different promotions in the independent scene, counting Revolution Women's Wrestling, Canadian Wrestling Federation, as well as Crossfire Wrestling, and various and Junction City Wrestling and various different promotions in Ontario, Canada. I have trained in professional wrestling for approximately 2 years on and off. Even though I started 4 years ago, I've been off for 1 year at a time due to injury. I will plan to continue this training for a foreseeable future and eventually step into the ring. I have some experience in ring experience, but mainly like very small shows. That is. I have been a referee in pro wrestling matches. I have for different promotions, including, Battle Arts Professional Wrestling, as well as like wrestling promotions in Hamilton and Niagara. That is, I have been a wrestling ring announcer, specifically for CWF wrestling, as well as my own promotion. I was the ring, like also the ring announcer. And I've also done professional wrestling commentary as well. So I have a very, thorough knowledge about the professional wrestling business. So anything professional wrestling related, you can just shoot me a question, specifically from both a like mainly a business perspective, but also a competitor's perspective or a participant or a performer's perspective as well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good thing that you mentioned because as a promoter, as a referee, and so on, as a commentator, you probably have a lot of knowledge as to the skills of your of
Mhm.
wrestlers
Yeah.
that you see. So with that, I just wanted to ask, can you talk about the typical skills that you would require for wrestling in general? What do you want?
Okay. Now, again, we're not confusing professional wrestling with amateur wrestling because amateur or Greco-Roman wrestling or freestyle wrestling, because that's the
Yeah.
Olympic kind of sport. This is professional wrestling or the WWE style wrestling, to put it simple. Now, you ask me the specific skills that you need to succeed as a professional wrestler. Um, of course, number one is your conditioning, your uh, your what do you call it, stamina. You need to have a lot of stamina. You're gonna do a lot of shows throughout the year. That is, so there are some wrestlers who do like 200 300 shows a year. Sometimes they do every day 2 or 3 shows every day as well. So, and even there are wrestlers who are working two jobs at the same time, like they're wrestling but they're also doing their job, but wrestling on the weekends. That is, so you have to be willing to take, even though this is the it's a performance, and even though it's a work, do not use the word fake, but it's the pain and the effort is real. It gets real, especially you know, what do you call it, especially because you're going to be on the road and you're going to be fighting in front of different arenas. So though the stamina as well as the mental and physical stamina are very necessary skills to be a successful professional wrestler if you wish to break into professional wrestling as a sport. Um, then you have to have a specific, like if you have a knowledge of a different martial art, for example, if you have a boxing background or an amateur wrestling or Greco-Roman wrestling or even a jiu-jitsu background, it can particularly help you transition a bit easier because sure, it's a different sport, but at the same time, you will find certain holds, certain throws, certain particular actions very similar. So you will you want to also like it can help you get creative with inventing moves as well on the way as well, because some of the best pro wrestling moves come from wrestling, like the amateur, like the what do you call it, from real fighting, I would say, like, for the lack of a better term, real fighting. Professionally trained fighters have brought in different moves in professional wrestling, and in the 1860s or 1930s or 50s, I'm not sure, and this is from what my trainers have told me, when professional wrestling used to be a carnival sport. So the background of professional wrestling is it started off as a carnival sport. So in the carnival days, when they used to train the wrestlers, they used to train them to fight for reals
Yeah.
first. First, that's what you had to learn up until the 1950s. And I may be wrong. It could, in some promotions, still, like some wrestling schools, still train you to be try to at least learn how to. We call this term a shoot. A shooter was the real fighter, because in those days you would have someone like, if you've seen the Spider-Man movie, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, where you're like, oh, step into the ring with the wrestler, last 3 minutes, and then you'll win $3,000, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So the shooter ensured that the money stayed in the wrestling business, because the shooter was one of the best fighters you could have, and the shooter guaranteed that the outsider or the regular Joe wouldn't realize, like, no, this is legit. So the shooter, then you would learn how to shoot, and then you'd learn how to work. The work was the theatrical aspect of it, the showmanship of it. So you learned that later, but first you'll break in. And even in this day too, if you break into a professional wrestling school gym, your trainer is gonna try to test your stamina, and he will make you go hard, borderline beat the living crap out of you.
Yeah.
Borderline,
I've seen quite a bit of that.
yes.
And yeah, with that as well, like while you're another quick question I would have for my on behalf of my audience
Mhm.
would be yeah, you mentioned all these skills, but what is the difference between Greco-Roman wrestling, or essentially that's the wrestling you see with
Mhm.
NCAA wrestling and high school wrestling and stuff, and what you see with The Rock and John Cena, like hitting each
Yeah,
other with chairs? What would the
yeah.
difference?
What's the difference? Yes. So basically, the difference is of course, the showmanship. It's a show at the end of the day. One's a sport, and one is emulating a sport. Now, the professional wrestling also has a story. That is, you're telling a story. It's like a soap opera that's happened, or soap opera combined with a comic book come to life. That is.
Yeah,
So it has that element of theater that makes it more distinct. That's why you have the chairs, because it gets more. Oh my God, that's the heightens the drama.
yeah, the
And
trash talking and everything in
trash
the
talking,
chairs.
yeah. And UFC kind of, if you've noticed, adopted a lot of like the trash talking from professional wrestling. Yeah, another skill to be a professional wrestler, I would also add, you have to be either a good talker or have someone with you who can talk for you on your behalf. Like, for example, Brock Lesnar. He is not the best talker for himself, but he had Paul Heyman as the guy who would speak on his behalf.
Whose
And Paul
mouth was
Heyman,
human embodiment of a trash can.
yeah, human embodiment, and the fact that he's the human, not only a trash can, but also the human embodiment of a lion tamer. That is,
Yeah.
he's the lion. Brock Lesnar is the lion, Heyman's the tamer or the trainer, and then he's just gonna let him loose, basically. So you also like the wrestling manager, we would call it as well, like the manager, the on-screen manager. Undertaker, one of the most famous wrestlers, had a manager with that really creepy voice, Paul Bear, with the really creepy voice. So it's like just build up that aura of like this Undertaker and Kane being like these Michael Myers like monsters who were silent most of the time and just stare you dead in the eye. So that's where for only also for theatrical purposes you need like to be able to talk, but also for not everybody's going to be a skilled talker. That's the harsh reality of life. Like you're not going to be a skilled public speaker, so or at least or an actor, that is. So you do have some level of acting skills that are necessary to also differentiate between Greco-Roman or freestyle wrestling. Like you don't need acting skills in that. Like you don't need acting skills. Your skills are enough. Whereas in professional wrestling, you kind of also need the acting as well because it's a show and because you need a character, that is. And what you're portraying is something more. It's like a show that is emulating a sport, and because it's emulating a sport, the story of this sport keeps on going forever. Like the story of professional wrestling never ends. It parallels your real life, that is.
Yeah, like I still remember the days when you had Stone Cold Steve Austin trashing Booker T in a grocery store.
And
Then
you
you had the days with who the hell was
even
it? Chris
Austin,
Jericho and The Rock talking
yeah,
trash about Stephanie's
the Stephanie's like, yeah, again, those as even though those stories, if you watch them today, they'll make you cringe a little. But that's the beauty of professional wrestling. You can take any story and make it into a reason to fight. Like there was a story where Chris Jericho spilled coffee on Kane.
and they had
That
Monday
led
Night
to
Raw.
a wrestling match. Imagine. Imagine someone fighting in a ring just because someone spilled coffee on you. Another example I'll give you is what do you call it? There was a story with oh crap. There was I apologize if the word crap is not legal, but yeah, there was a there. This is a very good story. It's if you've seen stories about a man fighting over like a woman's affection, like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage fighting over Miss Elizabeth. That was a story. Triple H and Kurt Angle fighting over Stephanie McMahon because like they wanted to win her affections. That is. So those are the kind of stories. And Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin he's beating the living bejesus out of his own boss because it reflects the real life. Like we hate our bosses. We really hate our bosses in real life most of the time, and Stone Cold represents that inner anger that you have towards your boss and whatever you want to do to your boss. Or like again, this is to bosses that are unnecessarily bullies. That is, was Vince McMahon playing the bully boss versus the guy who's like standing up for the weak and is like just
Yeah.
like any reason you can, from spilling coffee to like winning the affections of a woman to a shampoo commercial was also part of a story between Booker T and Edge. They were fighting in the ring at WrestleMania, one of the biggest events in the world. Like, sure, and it was all over a shampoo commercial. So this is the great thing about professional wrestling is that you can have that showmanship. Like you can create so many stories. Sure, the basic stories you can start off is championships, right? Like, oh, I want to be world heavyweight champion. The simplest story you can start with or I want to be United States or women's champion, something like that, right? Emulating the sport. But you can also get silly with spilling coffee in shampoo commercials.
Yeah, do you know when I lost my innocence and found out that this was all choreographed?
Yes.
I forgot who else it was, but do you know Stephen Amell from The Arrow?
Stephen Amell, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so the first fight that he had in WWE,
yes,
where
yes.
I forgot who it
Cody
was,
Rhodes
but
was Cody Rhodes, Stardust.
yeah, Stardust took
Yeah,
away his hat. This guy jumps into the ring and beats him up. And then
yeah.
when Triple H, I think, was in the background, like telling these guys like don't fight, like, and Stephen Amell's like, I'll have my guys tell your guys, like, talk to your guys and sign whatever I need to sign. And
Yeah.
then who I think it was Nelly or whoever it was next to him
Nelly.
was like forgot his lines, and then everyone just stared at him like, oh shit, oh yeah. And I'm like, that was the day I realized, oh shit, this is actually story YouTube bots, but this is when I lost my innocence, basically being like, oh, this is all like choreographed.
I wouldn't even say innocence, but more like, you kind of realize like this is more of a show that is. It's like,
Yeah,
and people like to trash wrestling or professional wrestling because it's a show. Oh, it's fake. Why do you watch that thing? It's fake. You hear that and you're like,
it's just as fake as the cricket matches that get money
not
paid
only
for.
that, no, not only that, but I would ask them. My response is, do you watch Magic? Do you watch a magic show?
Yeah,
Do you think magic is real?
no,
Exactly. Then why do you watch it?
for the
Because you want to
entertainment.
be entertained. Exactly. It's called entertainment. So entertainment, just because it's not real, like especially when you're watching a movie, the moment I like it's they try their best. They're spending millions and millions of dollars for you to get up out of your house, your comfortable chair, go to a theater and watch that movie so you can be you buy into that reality. And the same a logic applies to pro wrestling, is that you're buying into the reality that is, and you respect that reality. It's not real, of course, but you respect the performers and the showmanship and the effort that goes behind it and presenting a show, because you want to be immersed into that story. That is, from, like I said, I love the shampoo commercial and coffee spilling to title pictures and beating up your boss
So, yeah,
and forgetting your
yeah,
lines too. That's another story.
dude, I grew up watching this stuff, and I
Yeah.
know a lot of people did as well.
Yes.
And WWE is something that's a huge part of people's lives, and they don't even realize
And a
it.
huge part of their childhood too,
Yeah, a
like
huge part of their childhood. Like I
childhood.
still remember there was one with Triple H where he got some guy who's a smoker and like
Yeah.
shaved his head on in public. It made him quit smoking.
Yeah. That's
And
that. And I think they've done a lot of head shaving ones too. Like, oh, if you lose, you're gonna have your head shaved.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a really big part of my childhood to
Yeah.
watch that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And yeah, like it is a it's a part of our I think in human culture, basically, that is like the showmanship. It's kind of combining wrestling and theater together, because it's like a circus, right? Like you have your giants like the Great Khali and Big Show, then you have your small guys like Rey Mysterio and Tajiri. Like, you remember Rey Mysterio, like the
yeah,
luchador. And then you have your heavyweights like brawler like Triple H, Stone Cold, and John Cena as well. Then you have your, like, the trash talkers like CM Punk. You have your different characters, that is, so it's emulating a sort of like a carnival circus, basically. It's like a variety show of almost. So that's where you see a lot of like different styles of professional wrestlers and different gimmicks. Heck, you even had a walking dead zombie wizard, aka the Undertaker, who turned
yeah.
into a biker for who's also a biker at the same time. You're like, what? Like this is getting weird. But wrestling in itself, like the stories get weird, but I think that's the beauty about
Yeah. So with that,
it.
you talked about what you expect from wrestling, what you saw, and so on. And for me, as much of a fan I am as for wrestling, UFC is my
Yes,
wheelhouse, and
yes.
not just UFC, but like Bellator, MMA in general, right?
Yep.
So, what skills do you see in an MMA athletes that you think are applicable in
Oh,
wrestling?
plenty. That is what we can see. Because one of the main underlying themes of professional wrestling is that it has uses real life elements to tell a story in a fictional world. And that's the pull of wrestling. Like it can mix fantasy and reality and blur the lines really well. And that is why an MMA fighter or UFC, someone from Bellator or UFC, would be a huge boost to professional wrestling in the sense that if they learn the professional wrestling skills, they can sort of like bring a sense of like, oh, is this for reals? And then, people would be more intrigued that it's like a real fighter stepping into this ring. Let's see like how he matches up with these guys in this specific circle. And you can even use his MMA career to even tell a story. That is, for example, like you have many like Brock Lesnar, for example. Sure, he had an NCAA background, and then he went to like also Japan. But his him winning the UFC championship, they when he came back to professional wrestling, they used that as a way to tell a story that wherever he went, he dominated his opponent's status. He dominated his opponents. So you kind of built him up as like this final boss, kind of like brutal heavyweight fighter that if you take him down, you will be like the new hero. That is like the hero of the people. And I think very recently Brock Lesnar was defeated by Drew McIntyre, a professional wrestler of Scottish origin, and he defeated Brock Lesnar to become WWE Heavyweight Champion. The moment he won it, he became like this big name because he defeated what was a man perceived as a tough guy. Because UFC, like if a UFC fighter comes into WWE, he's immediately perceived as a tough guy. Immediate perception is that, oh, he's very tough. That is. And because there's real life elements to back that up. That is, there's a real life thing. Like remember when Mark Henry even made his debut, and Kurt Angle. That is, Mark Henry was a strongman. That added to the mystique of it in professional wrestling. Kurt Angle, an Olympic gold medalist, he won an Olympic gold medal. Like, that's no small feat. And coming into professional wrestling, it added to his skill. Like, the fan, not only fan, but like the audience, even the casual audience perception that this is a very tough guy, and he's also going in toe to toe with another tough guy. That is. So you can build off a story. Had Kurt Angle used that I'm an Olympic gold medalist throughout his entire career, he used that I'm an Olympic gold medalist. I won the gold medal with a broken freaking neck. And you know what? That is true. He legit had a broken neck when he won his gold medal. Albeit he won it via disqualification in the final round, but it's no less of a feat. That is, it's still a major
Yeah.
feat on the big world stage that you achieved. So you use that as an element to tell the story and build up how tough your character is. And Kurt Angle learned the skills of pro wrestling very quickly because he had that wrestling background. So he was able to adopt like his wrestling style to professional wrestling and make it. If you watch the match Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle, you will see that how they emulate a real, like it feels a little like real, that is, in the sense that it feels like they're trying to like out wrestle each other, like literally out wrestle each other. So that's the story they told, like an NCAA champion versus an Olympic gold medalist. And if they tell that story today, oh wow, that this is going to be a very interesting story. UFC fighter versus Olympic gold medalist. So you can tell it's as an MMA fighter, you do have an advantage. However, like you have to be very careful that as an MMA fighter, you're taught to like hit for reals, right? So you're taught to hit for reals. In this, your hits are going to be a bit more of a work, that is. So you have to, because it's built in, so it's very difficult to unlearn that or like avoid using your fist or avoid, like it's basically because it's built into you, like it's a bit difficult to like, when you're transitioning to professional wrestling, it's like, oh, now you're learning the opposite thing. But as an
Yeah,
MMA
just
fighter,
for a reference for the audience, for imagination, it's like learning how to swim
mhm.
your entire life and all of a sudden having to do doggy paddle
Exactly.
in the water.
You have to do a completely different style of, for example, swimming. For
Yeah.
example, you
Let's
have to,
yeah, like in
or,
movies and
or
stuff, like a lot of actors know how to swim, but when they have to get into the water and act like they're drowning.
yes. So you have to basically act like whether you're weak or strong. You have to act something, and you have to like ham it up, and it's a completely different skill altogether. So that's where mentally speaking, you have to like be able to make that switch and be
Yeah.
able to like create that, because I know muscle memory would have you like stand in that stance and be ready to fight, but then in a professional wrestling show things get a bit different. Like you still have to have that stance, but then you have to be careful, like how you apply your hold status.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a definitely an advantage, but the fighter has to be super careful, super careful,
Yeah.
how he transitions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially like moving different styles. Like
Hmm.
the way I can compare it is I originally did Muay Thai, and in
Hmm.
Muay Thai you stand in a southpaw stance essentially because you have to be free to kick and everything. But then when I shifted into boxing,
Hmm.
my coach would be like, "Dude, what the hell are you doing?" Because I'm a right-handed guy who stands in a left-hander's stance or in a southpaw
Yes.
stance,
Yes.
which is a really rare thing. And I have to like, I got so used to like standing in a southpaw stance for
Mm.
boxing and like in Muay Thai, and when I have to like transfer that into boxing
Yes.
into a proper form, it gets like really hard for me to do. So
Absolutely.
I understand what they're talking about, but just for people who d- can't find it hard to imagine, it's like learning different styles. Just
Absolutely.
because, and also from a programming audience, it's like trying to learn one language and shifting to another programming language where
Absolutely.
the base is all the same. Like, yes, you need the base principles of programming to go from C++ to SQL, let's say,
Hmm.
but they're both used for different things. They're
Absolutely.
both theories are essentially different. The syntax and everything is different. So just knowing one doesn't necessarily mean you'll learn the second one great.
Yes. And it all depends on the learner or the fighter, that is, or the professional wrestler. Regardless if they're transitioning from professional wrestling to MMA or vice versa, that is, it's you have to be. It all depends on you.
Yeah. So I know you mentioned Brock Lesnar to
Hmm.
us.
Yes.
Uh, but I know there's a lot of other people that
Mhm.
went from MMA into pure wrestling.
Mhm.
Can you give us
I
a few examples and
yeah.
exactly just discuss like what were some of the good things they did and what were some of the bad things they did?
Okay. So one of the one of the best examples of professional wrestling and MMA I can think of is Dan Severn. Dan Severn has one of the best records in MMA, and he has 101 wins compared to I think 17 or 19 losses. Compare that to Brock Lesnar, 5 wins and 3 losses. Brock Lesnar's record is nothing compared to Dan Severn's. No disrespect to Brock Lesnar, but Dan Severn also at the same time he was an MMA champion. He was a professional wrestling champion at the NWA promotion at the
Yeah.
same time. So it's like it's the equivalent I can think of is like being a WWE and UFC champion at the same time. Imagine that. So that was what Dan Severn back in his heyday was. Another good example I think of, very recent example, is Ronda Rousey transitioning into professional wrestling. We'll talk about her. We'll talk about her.
Yeah, I have a
We'll
lot
talk
to say
about her.
about Ronda.
We have a lot to say about her. So Ronda Rousey is another example. You have Ken Shamrock, a very notable UFC fighter and WWE wrestler. Ken Shamrock has had like 28 wins and I think 17, 19 losses, something like that. Very experienced also in professional wrestling. He's been a wrestling champion as well. Um, then you have Dave Batista, who had, even though albeit only had one fight, but at the age of 42, he was able to win in, I think, UFC. He won
Yeah,
his UFC fight.
yeah.
Then you have another better, like in my opinion, a better fighter than Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley has been a WWE champion, an ECW. He's been a TNA World Heavyweight Champion, but he's also been in shark fights. He's been a champion and has a record of I think 15 wins and 2 losses. So he has a very tough record. Another wrestler, I know his wrestling name. His UFC name would be different. Alberto Del Rio. Alberto Del Rio was started off as amateur, Greco-Roman wrestling. MMA fighter with 15 fights, 9 wins, and I think 5 losses and 1 no decision. Good fighter. I think he also went against Crow Cop as well in a fight. Alberto Del Rio has been also wrestling world champion as well. So a very, very tough guy, Alberto Del Rio. Also, I think his name is Alberto Joan Rodriguez or something like that. So something I don't remember his real name. It escapes me at the moment. Then you have Jack Swagger. Not only is he a 2-time All-American wrestling champion, but also a professional wrestling heavyweight champion. And then he also has a good record in, I think, either it was Bellator. Was he on Bellator, Jack Swagger?
I think, yeah, he was on Bellator.
Bellator, yeah. Jack
Oh,
Swagger was on Bellator, and he was definitely performed exceptional. Then you have, before he switched to AEW, another professional wrestling promotion that is a competitor to WWE. You have Jack Gallagher, who's a British pro wrestler, but also an MMA fighter as well. You have countless examples of even Matthew Riddle. Matthew Riddle, or Matt Riddle, people call him. He's also a UFC fighter, MMA fighter. My apologies, as well as like a WWE wrestler. You have what do you call it? We have from NWA. You have Thunder Rosa. She's known as Thunder Rosa with the gimmick with the half mask basically, and she's also an MMA fighter as well. So you have even Jack Briscoe back in the day was a noted real fighter as well. Jack Briscoe. Back in I think the 1930s, and then you had you have countless examples with like Steve Blackman, who was a martial artist and as well as a professional wrestler. You had Tank Abbott, who was who was a fighter as well as a professional wrestler. You have what do you call it? I There's a female wrestler who escapes my name at the moment, escapes my mind. If she comes up, I'll even provide the description below. I'll provide you with the names. I'll even link a what do you call it? A list of professional wrestler and MMA fighters as well as their fight records. Even though it's a Wikipedia page, it's fairly accurate. You have Bart Gunn. Bart Gunn was known to be, there was a competition in WWE, Brawl for All, where they tested real fighting. So Bart Gunn won that tournament, even though that wasn't the intention of that tournament, which was again, the tournament itself was a stupid idea from a professional wrestling standpoint, because the bread and butter of professional wrestling is the predetermination of the outcome. So Bart Gunn also got into MMA as well because he wanted his revenge against Butterbean. I know he got knocked out at WrestleMania against Butterbean in a boxing match because he tried to box him. Butterbean did say that if he tried his regular style, he would have had a 50-50 chance of beating me. But the moment he tried to box me, I got him. So Butterbean, he wanted to fight Butterbean again, and he trained in MMA as well. And he also got like a few fights under his belt as well. But he never got the chance to face Butterbean. He really wanted to face Butterbean. Antonio Inoki, I cannot finish this video without Antonio Inoki, the great Antonio Inoki, one of the best shoot fighters, one of the best professional wrestlers in the world, one of the best promoters on the planet, and a great politician at the same time as well. So Antonio Inoki, like, you cannot complete a professional wrestling topic without Antonio Inoki. And also he had a notable encounter with Muhammad Ali as well,
Yeah.
where he was only allowed to use the kicks, whereas Ali was only allowed to punch. And Antonio Inoki was he's a wrestling legend in WWE as well as in Japan as well. So Antonio Inoki is a notable, quote unquote, like the perfect example of a professional wrestler and MMA fighter merged together. So those are the few. And I'm very embarrassed to talk about this particular person, CM Punk.
So am I. I'm embarrassed listening to it.
As much as like I used to be a fan of CM Punk because of his like talking ability in wrestling, but he lost his credibility when he lost 2 fights in MMA. Sure, it's a big deal, like transitioning. It's not easy, but at the same time, he was not only pitted against fighters way better than his level, but at the same time, like, he has that thing where he lost credibility for professional wrestling too, like, because he's not he's not a real, like, he's a tough guy, but not a trained fighter like Brock Lesnar, for example. He, even though he lost his first fight, he bounced back and he worked harder and he was able to become UFC champion. So he was just no Brock Lesnar. So he got practically exposed in the weight division that he was in. So CM Punk, sure, it's like one of those. I mentioned in my last video that he was introduced as the drug-free kind of wrestler. That's what the
Yeah.
idea was behind him. But it just, like, there's a lot of bad blood between CM Punk and WWE, and some of it for good reason, a lot of it for not really a good reason at all.
Yeah.
And he destroyed his own credibility by stepping into the octagon and getting.
And what pissed me about him the most is when there's this one show called, like, on Netflix called The Ultimate Beastmaster,
Mhm.
and this guy had, it's like, put like one all his trash talking and not being able to back it up in both the UFC and WWE, but
Mm,
then putting like salt on that wound by going in, standing next to, and talking with Anderson Silva.
yeah.
And at one point, even mocking Anderson Silva, and I'm like, Anderson Silva is the GOAT of MMA.
Mhm.
Like, no way, and the guy Anderson Silva can be blind from eye pokes from the previous fight and still kick CM Punk's ass.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like CM Punk, he's professional wrestling, but then he's only an expert in professional wrestling, and
Yeah.
that's what he displayed. Like, sure, and it's kind of like unfortunate, but at the same time, like, he thought of himself as good as John Cena or The Rock, for example. Like, he saw him as
Nowhere in hell.
yeah. And you as a casual fan is saying there's a lot of like hardcore wrestling fans want to equate him to that, but it's like when you look at CM Punk, you look at The Rock and John Cena, you're like, this is like day and night. The
Yeah.
difference, the physique difference you have, then you have the talking ability, the character difference. As like like some like Rock, like, sure, CM Punk's a decent actor, but like he doesn't have that charisma, that level of charisma. And at the same time, like,
He's basically a gym bro. He's
yeah.
like I go to the gym, he
Mm-hmm.
goes to the gym. Like, me and him are at a similar level, in my opinion.
Yeah.
in terms of
Again,
like physique and all that.
yeah.
But like and the reason why I say that is because you can't like obviously a guy in the gym who's like benching 250 or something
Mhm.
is strong. Don't get me wrong, but like if you put him into a pro wrestling situation, he's not gonna do well. Yeah, he's gonna trash talk, but like he doesn't have the
Yeah.
skill to do that.
Yeah.
And
He
I think
has
CM Punk is just that guy who's
he's the
probably like teased in the gym, but like not a good transition.
yeah. Yeah, he's the pure example of what you call a trash talker in
Yeah,
wrestling, right? Sure. The Rock initially had the that gimmick, right? The trash talker gimmick. But The Rock had the
skills.
athletic ability to back it up. He had the athleticism to back it up because not only he's from a very tough Samoan family in professional wrestling. Like this family, you don't screw around with, Samoa, the Samoan families. And The Rock had the physique, the muscular physique, but and in spite of his size, he moved like a cruiserweight. So he was really fast at the same time. So it was a combination of size, strength, and like agility, and also being able to trash talk. Like it was a package that you had, practically a package. And now he's in Hollywood too, like a great actor as well. So it's like a very what do you call multi-talented person. Sure, he's not Brock Lesnar. He's not the fighter like Brock Lesnar, for example, but he is athletic. He's definitely athletic because he had a football background, so he has the athleticism and the professional wrestling background. Just not, what do you call it? He's not the same as Brock Lesnar because
Yeah,
Brock Lesnar is the fighter, in my opinion. That is. So, but like when you compare CM Punk to, you can't compare CM Punk to guys like Brock Lesnar, The Rock, or John Cena because like just, I feel like they're here and CM Punk is kind of like here-ish.
yeah. If they get into the cage together, do you know that Tom and Jerry gif where like Tom's spanking the younger cat?
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes.
what basically what's gonna happen, and the height
Um,
difference matches exactly as well.
and the height, the weight difference, and the body type difference. Like basic. I think with CM Punk also like he's not a big framed guy compared to you know someone like
Yeah,
Brock Lesnar, for example. Heck, he had a good match with Brock Lesnar in SummerSlam, a pro wrestling match,
yeah.
but you could see that they had to make it a bit realistic. Like CM Punk is using weapons to be able to fight Brock Lesnar because Brock Lesnar is legit throwing him around, and that like those two worked really well in the sense that they emulated that if this were a real fight, Brock Lesnar would legit start by throwing CM Punk around and just like bullying him if anything. And
Yeah,
CM Punk then when he used kendo stick, that's where it's like okay, it's a bit more realistic that he would use a weapon to be able to come back in that real life scenario, that is. So it kind of like blended those two elements
it's
together and
like it's
story.
like watching an older brother fight a younger brother.
Yeah, exactly. And then the younger brother just somehow manages to pull out a weapon and like be able to like slow down his older brother, kind of deal. Sure,
And
Brock Lesnar.
until that point, it's like grabbing it. Until that point, the older brother's manhandling the younger brother, like
Yes,
sitting on him once in a while and
yes, yes. Yeah.
picking him up,
It was,
tossing him around.
it was just it's a very entertaining. I definitely recommend watching that match because I think WWE has it on their YouTube channel, so definitely watch CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar. As a as a like displaying that little brother versus older brother kind of stereotypical fight, that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's CM Punk. We actually went into on CM Punk a lot. um
Yeah, I actually want to get on Ronda
yeah.
Rousey, or as I like to call her, Ronda Rousey,
All right.
because because I watched that fight with her and no, the press conference with her and I think it had Cowboy, Jose Aldo,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um
And was it like a
McGregor.
and then there was also a podcast that she did where she completely trashes professional wrestling too, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like the reason why I was saying Ronda Rousey was in that one press
yeah,
conference
yeah, yeah,
when McGregor was trash talking Aldo. He was like, after the fight, you're gonna go after the fight's like made. You're gonna go home, call your wife. You're gonna tell her like McGregor made me rich. Put on the red panties. We're gonna have a party tonight. And she was just like, oh my
yeah.
god. And like the janitor had to like mop up after her.
Oh
That's
man.
because of how like wet she got.
Oh man, so that was the joke behind it. Okay, that was the joke behind it. It's
Yeah,
very,
no,
very
I can like I watch all the press conferences and the actual fights,
yeah,
and I could not forget that because like Holmes, I think it was Holmes was sitting there as well, like just
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
dead as silent, but
yeah, yeah.
like Ronda was like, oh my god. Every time McGregor talked, she was like,
Oh, so that's where the arousy came,
yeah,
basically.
she was.
Oh, this is what you call the beauty of the internet, beauty of the internet and memes.
Oh
Just
yeah, like if I ever want to pick up ladies, I'll use that trick that McGregor used. I'll get take and I need someone who can. I have a lot of material on, so I'll just take
yeah.
Igor.
Yeah, you take my our good friend Igor. Like, make sure that you don't get tased by any security guards or anything like that. I would definitely recommend that. Or
Yeah, I think most of
pepper
my
spray.
audience knows who Igor is. We went to high school together.
Yeah, just be careful not to get pepper spray over your eyes either by trying to use the arousy methods. And I would definitely recommend being safe and being very careful and being more
Oh,
classy.
I won't get pepper sprayed. Igor's awkwardness will get us pepper sprayed first.
I love Igor. I love Igor so much. I love
Dude,
Igor
don't
so
worry,
much.
I love this guy as well. Like this guy has so much material for me.
Yeah,
Just to trash talk.
yeah. But yeah, back to professional wrestling.
Yeah,
So
we don't want to
Ronda
Yeah, we want to
Rousey.
be roasting Ronda and not Igor.
Yeah, let's not Igor. We love Igor. We don't love Ronda Rousey. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, like I think what Ronda Rousey in that podcast, she said that oh, I'm tired. I'm 200 nights a year. Like these fans are ungrateful. Like I want to spend more time with my family. Then she went around saying that oh, like calling professional wrestling fake fights, right?
yeah,
Now this and she this rub and she's like, oh, like professional wrestlers, just because you call it fake, they have really soft egos, blah blah blah. Now here's what Ronda is very ignorant of.
yeah,
Real fighters have a massive respect for professional wrestling. They have had a huge respect, especially throughout history, because a lot of them became professional wrestlers for a living too. So they knew that, especially in the back in the days, that you were trained to like fight for reals before transitioning into professional wrestling. That's the history behind professional wrestling. Then you have it was they tried their best to protect the business and not try to overtly expose it. It's like saying a magician coming out saying, oh hey, I fooled you guys, I'm just using this, this pigeon was in my underwear all this time, or that rabbit is not even real, the rabbit. So it's like, why would you do that? Why would you try to expose the bread and butter is the audience guessing what's real and what's not, right? And
yeah,
it's disrespectful. And even Ronda Rousey was, when she came to WWE, she was practically pampered. Like, she was given her first match at WrestleMania at the biggest stage, was given to with Stephanie McMahon, who's a great heel, like the perfect heel you have, like the chicken shit. I'm sorry,
Hold on.
like the chicken.
Yo, one sec, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, can I go?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
yeah.
So
No, sorry, my mom just
Stephanie
talked
McMahon
in.
was that perfect heel. She worked with Triple H, a very experienced in-ring general in professional wrestling, Triple H, and Kurt Angle, the perfect guy who transitioned from fighting like the freestyle wrestling, real wrestling, to worked wrestling, like the perfect guy. So she had the safest workers to work with, like these two guys. And then you had, worked with Charlotte Flair, you worked with Becky Lynch, some very big, high profile ladies wrestlers as well. You were pushed to even become Raw Women, or I think Raw Women's Champion. Like you were given a championship, and like this is what you do at the end. Like you just want to, like
Pressure.
you could have just been a lot more respectful and say, hey, I want to spend some time with my family, and not throw a hissy fit about it, and just say, hey, I just want to take a break from professional wrestling.
I think it was all the brain damage that Brendan Schaub gave her with his comedy.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I think that's where the comedy, the memes are gonna arise from.
Dude, I watched his last stand-up
Yeah.
special. I had to get out of there before I got
Mhm.
CTE myself from watching his
Oh my god.
idiotic
You know,
jokes.
the Ronda's biggest complaint was the fans didn't appreciate her, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. I get it. Some fans can get a bit toxic and the comments can get mean, right? Especially if you've seen toxic fans in professional wrestling and UFC. You get very irritated when fans say stuff, but they've never been in the ring themselves before. And
Yeah.
then they have an opinion about a fighter, that is. It's like you've never been into an octagon or a professional wrestling ring, but you have an opinion of who's the better wrestler. Like, shut up, like shut up. You want to keep, like, sure, just because your favorite person's not winning doesn't mean you throw his fit. So
Yeah.
I get it, there are toxic fan bases and they're very vocal and they're on the internet. They're a minority, but they're a very vocal minority, and because they're keyboard warriors, that's the best
Yeah.
kind of way I can describe
Essentially. And if you like the thing I have to say to Ronda is like if she actually worries about the
the
words
keyboard
of these
warriors.
guys, like these guys are the fat guys that walk to their cars that's like parked behind a dumpster,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Like
they,
they walk around like looking like they're pregnant, like
yeah.
oh my god, like Ronda is a horrible person. Why are
Why?
you listening to those guys? Like
Yeah. And not only that, someone like Roman Reigns got booed so many times for reals. People legit hated this guy. And he's still wrestling. He came from cancer and back, and people even accused him of having fake cancer. And he actually had legit cancer. And this guy still gets a hard time because of that. And he's still going. He's still going. He's like rising up to the occasion. Roman Reigns, because he's being pushed by Vince McMahon, but he's taking that opportunity and making the best of it. Like if the boss, like the promoter pushes you, you make your best to like of that spot. And he respected the business. Then you were also given the same opportunity, but just because the fans turn on you, use that as to tell a story, not just like trash talk like professional wrestling as a business. And it's like, oh hey, I love the people at the backstage. Bye, I'm just gonna abandon you. And one of the big promoters in wrestling, he's also like kind of like myself. He's done almost everything in professional wrestling. Jim Cornette. What he said was like, again, his. I will also link his what he thinks about Ronda Rousey. He practically calls, like, he uses his southern accent and he calls her like the crybaby, and basically he says that try working, if you're tired of 200 shows a year, try working 100 shows in a row, that is. And for someone like Bill Watson, he's like, he brings up all these old fighters who had respect for the business, like, you know we and
and I think like Ronda in this situation as well was quite hypocritical because there is an interview of her
mhm,
where like the interviewer herself was pretty sexist and she was like why aren't you demanding the same amount of money as in respect as Floyd or McGregor get, and then she was like yeah, if my fights bring in as much money as Floyd or McGregor then yeah I'll demand the same amount of money, but like I
yeah,
like Floyd has 50 belts under his 50 fights under his belt. And, like what the hell do I have? So I can't, in all fairness, go out and demand the same amount of respect or money as Floyd.
yeah. And again,
And like if she goes around and does the same thing with WWE, where she's not an established WWE wrestler, yet she demands the same amount of respect as the
Yeah.
top guys out there.
Yeah, it's like, fans have every right to give you respect or no respect. And you have to deal with that, right? You have to deal with an audience because as many fans are you going to have, you're going to also have haters too. That's just a fact of life. That's show business right there. Also, Ronda Rousey, you're doing movies. You've also done movies as well. You have a big audience. Um, like, and yeah, she did say, yeah, I couldn't get sleep. It comes. It's the wear and tear of professional wrestling because you're traveling so much. Talk to your boss. Just say, I want to just work a part-time basis. Like, don't want to defend the belt every now and then, right? So yeah, just like, there are ways to work around it instead of this going around trashing professional wrestling and its fans like so much. It's like I would, like imagine if someone trashed UFC and its entire fan base, just like that, that you would find that person disrespectful, correct?
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah. So you would find that person disrespectful because you're putting making you're saying that all fans are stupid and alike. Basically, it's like no, there are different kinds of fans around the world. That is, it's a global world we live in, and um, she had a decent she probably had a great deal with Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon probably offered her a lot of money to work with
yeah.
WWE.
Considering how many UFC people that she would bring along.
Yes, and like you had Cain Velasquez, like he had to be let go of by WWE, but he didn't go on a rampage. That is, Cain Velasquez respected
Yeah,
the wrestling business,
yeah,
and Cain Velasquez brought also credibility to the wrestling business, and also benefited, the business itself. Brock Lesnar, you have like Dan Severn, like guys I've mentioned, like real fighters, but they never went on a tangent and say, oh, like this is a fake fight. I'm a real
yeah.
fighter. Blah blah blah. Like just
Yeah, like the thing is, it is choreographed, but it
choreographed.
still requires a lot of
It requires
skill.
time, effort, skill, and not only that, you're basically you these are two different things. You're comparing apples and oranges, basically. Very different things, similar but very different. So if any, and then she says, "Oh, it was a work like bullshit. Like, why?" And Triple H had his comments saying that he was very surprised at her comments as well. Triple H was very surprised. But he says that because he's maintaining good PR, he says that we'll have to wait and see if those comments, if she meant by those comments or not, or if
Yeah,
she's saying it in character, or because sometimes in professional wrestling, you also use break character, break the fourth wall sometimes
yeah,
to tell a story. But this didn't seem like a fourth wall breaking, but at the same time, it could be. There is a chance that it could be just breaking the fourth wall as well, as part of showbiz, or as part of to get clout or get attention. That is, and I see that it could be. You never know. It could be just to get attention because there is no such thing as bad publicity. Publicity is publicity, no matter at what cost. So, I think that was also the part of it, like going out with a bang. But at the same time, it was also done in a very disrespectful fashion. Again, I guess it just came across as very disrespectful. And I think one of the wrestlers, Nia Jax, kind of hinted that Ronda was not a safe worker. Like she would legit like injure her opponent. That is, um, so it's like you were provided the like you and if okay. Here's what I'm gonna sort of like finish this off with. Like I know I went on a rant and rampage, but
oh,
like
don't worry. If you heard my rants previously in the
yeah,
different episodes, you'd be like,
yeah,
yeah, no, this is a
yeah,
blessing. But yeah,
yeah,
we
yeah.
love listening to you. So if you want to rant, go ahead.
I know. If I were afforded the same platform and opportunity to myself as Ronda Rousey, I would be a lot more grateful of said opportunity, and I'll be more responsible of protecting the business and not exposing it because you know you want to like have some level of confidentiality. Every business, regardless of what place you work for, you have a duty of confidentiality. You have a duty of confidentiality. You're not gonna go around and say that, oh, this person's like this person's like that. Like, just like, you want to keep certain things confidential unless asked, and if you can legally do so. So sure, fans are curious about wanting to know the backstage workings of wrestling, but at the same time, you don't like you want to expose it in such a way that you don't want to completely expose it, and you want to be at least a bit respectful about it. Like for myself, that is, I didn't reveal to you how they particularly do certain moves and like what's the secret behind not getting hurt. I'm not going to expose that yet. Go to a wrestling school and learn that, as if you want to expose yourself to the business, that is. So like, it's complicated, yes. It's a very it's and I'm trying to be nice with Ronda Rousey, but if I were afforded the same opportunity she was, I would make the best of the opportunity, because WWE has the best wrestling trainers on the planet, and they have the safest style of wrestling because they have to do weekly shows, right? 3 or 4 shows a week.
Yeah, they don't want their fighters to die or get permanent brain
Exactly. In
damage.
in the indie scene, indie wrestling, they kind of like, because you have like one show every week or one show every month, you kind of like bring your all in that show, right? In independent wrestling. So in WWE, because you have a global audience, you're globally touring globally, you kind of have to like, learn that style. So if I were learning that style, I would, make the best of the opportunity. And if I'm getting tired, yeah, it is a tiring schedule. You're going to go to hotel. You're going to be on the road 200 nights, 300 nights a year. You're going to, you can just request your boss, hey, you know, I can't work this. Can I work a part-time thing? And that's always an option too. Like if you're getting tired, if you wanted to spend time with your family, that's always an option. Or you just want to take a break. Sure. Like, yeah, no problem. Take a break. I would have done the same, because I've also had vertigo in the past, and I've asked like, my trainer that, hey, is there a safe style to like learn a certain way? He's like, yeah, there's absolutely safe ways to do things too. Because it's a show, there are always a safe way to accommodate for, your, if you have an injury, how do you work through an injury? Or you don't have to wrestle in the ring. You can be a manager too, like a manager or an announcer or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
you have so many opportunities to, be successful on that stage. You don't have to be the wrestler. You could even be the Vince McMahon of it too. You can be the Vince McMahon, kind of like doing the power walk, the character. So
Yeah, and then you can turn into a meme, like,
you could turn into a meme. Yeah, that
and then you
jerk.
have like laser eyes coming out.
Yeah. So yeah, no, there's just so like Ronda Rousey is just, I feel like, very entitled, like the stereotypical entitlement, because you're already getting so much money. What are you really complaining about? You know? So it's like, where's it's like it's disrespectful, because like you've made so much. What are you exactly complaining about? Just take a break from all it all, if you're really tired.
Yeah.
Don't go around trashing the business that was, just basically like, she had it the easiest. I would guarantee she had the easiest, because wrestlers who have no name for themselves have to work from the bottom, and they have to work
Yeah.
sometimes with no pay.
Yeah, this is something else I like. When she was in MMA,
Hmm.
she went through like judo training, got her medal in judo competitions, Olympics, I believe, as well, and then she went into MMA, and like that, she worked very hard. And
Yes.
when she was in MMA, and she kept the idea of, oh, I'm not making as many, and she didn't take it for granted, and she didn't wasn't entitled in MMA. And that's why when people are like, why aren't you getting paid as much as Floyd, or like, why aren't you getting paid as much as McGregor, and he's like buying chimpanzees dressed up as Jose Aldo and stuff. But when the moment she was handed everything on a silver platter for wrestling, and she doesn't know the effort that most people put to come to that level in wrestling,
Yes.
I think she made a mistake by trash talking it. But
Yes.
because like I don't think it's a part of her nature, because in the field that she worked hard to get to,
Yeah. And I
she does it like she was the most respectful and least
Yes.
entitled person on the planet.
Yes.
Yeah, mind you, she could have gone a totally different route in MMA and like been like, yeah, and she would have could have pulled an Amy Schumer and
Yes.
like asked to be paid at the same as McGregor, even though her fights don't bring in the same amount of money.
Yeah. I
But
will
she
give,
didn't do that.
yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No worries.
We will provide a link of what Jim Cornette, a professional wrestling promoter, thought of Ronda Rousey. I'll send you the link, and we'll provide that in the description below.
Yeah,
See his opinion, and uh, and that's the general consensus of the professional wrestling world of what his opinion is. And I think it's also, it could be frustration of the moment as well, that you say certain things.
yeah,
And yeah, sometimes, it does, like, certain fan bases can get very toxic,
yeah,
and it's understandably frustrating that you're putting in the work with a no appreciation. But then that's show business at the end of the day, right? Like, you
yeah,
don't want to listen to someone's opinion, because an opinion of, let's just say, is the lowest form of human intelligence. And, like, no disrespect for you and I, but, like, we're kind of backing it up with what we've learned in our respective fields, but, like, and what we observe. No, but if it's like just the average fan who's like, not the average, but like that internet keyboard warrior that you're really listening to, it's like, and they are influencing everybody's opinion, but are you really letting a keyboard warrior determine, what you like, the a toxic keyboard warrior? You don't want to let them get to you, you don't want to let that kind of fan get to you. And yeah, it's a brutal world. That's show business in a nutshell. Like, that world is, fans will hate you, fans will like you really can't control that.
yeah. And with that, like I know we did go on a bit of a rant about Rhonda and like Rhonda, sweetie, we love you, but we just want to give our opinion.
Yeah.
And sorry about the Ronda Rousey thing. Please don't beat me up. Uh, but yeah, with that, I know we did a bit of talking, but the one of the biggest things that I want to talk about is UFC 249.
Mhm.
That's
Yes.
coming up
Yes.
on May 9th. Tomorrow I'll be doing a full-fledged review of the entire
Oh,
fight cards or the lineups.
yeah.
But today, I just want to ask Mustafa here about Justin versus Tony, the main title fight. I showed you a brief
I
bit
couldn't
about
hear you.
Justin
Wait, no,
versus
I couldn't
Ferguson.
hear you.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Ferguson. This is going to be a very interesting fight,
Yeah.
in my opinion. Again, I've only seen like clips of the fight, that is. But, like, I feel like Ferguson is a good contender because he has a methodical style. Like, it's very, like, and he's a tough guy, because I think in that fight with what's his name, uh
Pettis.
Pettis, yes. So he had like a cut at the back of his head, but he still kept going. He still kept going, and he has that mental grit that you have, and also the skill, as well as also, like, he's a bigger guy, but not like, jacked by any means, but lean and athletic, and, does have that advantage. The you know in that, it's the perfect physique for a fighter, in my opinion. That is, so physique wise, good conditioning, and, he doesn't waste his energy. Ferguson, I think, is, in my opinion, the favorite, but you really never know. You really never know who can win.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job at like. I think you watched the Barboza. You know it, Edson Barboza, and I think I showed you the Barboza versus
Yeah.
Justin
Yes.
fight.
Yes. Yes.
Barboza when he was fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know who Khabib is, right?
Khabib. Yes. Yeah. Khabib
Yeah,
is great. Yes.
yeah. So when Barboza gave a roundhouse kick to Khabib on the
Mhm.
head, which
Yes.
landed, the
Ooh.
result was Barboza flew backwards.
Ooh.
Khabib just stood there like this and ate it like a G. And Barboza fell backwards from the impact of that kick.
Ooh.
So if Khabib fought Ferguson,
Yeah.
My money's on Khabib.
I think Khabib would also have my money too,
Yeah,
because Khabib has, but it will be a very unpredictable fight.
it would have been a very unpredictable
It'll
fight.
also depend on who's the best prepared fighter for this specific fight,
Yeah,
because preparedness, training, your adequate rest, the diet as well, everything. There's so many things that go into the preparation of the fight that is. So whoever the better prepared man is gonna be the
yeah.
better.
That's
Uh,
why I was like really sad when they took out Khabib. Like Khabib right now is back in Russia and can't come to the States due to the
right.
entire quarantine and everything.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But yeah, so that's what I was sad. But they did a good job at the replacement because Gigante, I believe, like I can't pronounce the guy's last name. I just call him Justin. But like this guy is an absolute animal as well.
Oh
The
yes.
way
Yes.
he knocked out Barboza.
Barboza.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't get me wrong. Like I always talk about Barboza's losses, and yes, he does lose. But this guy's like lined up against some monster guys.
Yeah, and Barboza is a tough guy. Like he's a tough guy, and if someone like him can get and he's gotten to that level for a reason. Like
Yeah,
he's at that UFC level, so he has um he has the history of fighting, that is. So that
yeah,
experience and combined with skill. So if someone like him can get you know like basically with I think Justin's you know like how the way Justin defeated him, it's like whoa, like Justin means business. And I think it's a very unpredictable scenario, that is, at this point. Like you never know, it could be anybody's fight.
yeah,
uh but if I were placing money, sure, it's kind of like a personal liking for Ferguson, personally speaking, because I think you showed me this time, like, yeah, I really like this style of fighting.
yeah,
Like I really like this. It's like very slow, methodical, no wasted energy or anything like that. And also very calm too. Very calm.
yeah.
So but like the right amount of aggression too at the same time. So yeah, it could be anybody's fight. So UFC 249, we're definitely looking forward to watching UFC 249, and I'll find a way to stream it too.
Yeah, I'll probably find a way to like I'll do like I'll probably do what like Joe Rogan does and do like fight
Yeah.
night.
Yes.
But like the thing is, it's gonna be too vulgar for YouTube if I do fight night.
Well, I think you might want to use your toilet paper throne specifically for that, to actually counterbalance the brutality with comedy. So
Dude, I still remember I was in the library with a few friends.
yeah,
This was in our campus library, and
yes,
my God, I was watching a free fight, and this wasn't actually a title belt or something. This was a free fight,
yeah.
and I was up standing up like, check that kick, and like the guys around me were like, Nick, sit down. We're in the library.
Yes, yes. I can get very exciting. It's like you're very invested in, and that's me in with professional wrestling. That used to be me with professional wrestling, and even with UFC when I used to watch. Like yes, yes. Now because you kind of know the intricacies, I've kind of like calmed down a bit. It's like
Yeah,
more.
you know how the sausage is made.
Yeah, I just know how the sausages are made. So it's like now I'm like more looking at, he made a very nice sausage. Another nice sausage. This is a
Nice
good technique.
sausage.
It's a siege. And I'm like using like these carnival terms, and people are like, wait, what are you talking about? And like when I know the names of holds and stuff, and they're like, what are you talking about? When casual viewers are sitting there like, oh, you don't know the name of the hold. Yeah, I kind of remember. Shoot, I, you kind of like know a little too much, and then they kind of don't notice the little things. There's like, I would say something like, that's a nice like people know what like a general number of people know what an uppercut or a cross or like a jab is, right? But there's still a surprising number of people who don't know what a jab is, or what a what do you call it, a hammerlock is, or something like
Yeah,
what is the certain names of like different holds, like Kimura lock or something like that, right?
yeah,
Or like you know there's different kicks have different names, so you kind of like use those names. And when I say like something like that's a nice left uppercut, it's like, wait, what did you say? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
so you're
And
kind of
like
like,
I remember I had a friend,
yeah,
she does skating, and I took her to the gym to try to teach her how to actually fight.
yeah,
And she was like, the way she was punching, like I'll just show by example.
yeah,
She just did like this. Yeah,
yeah,
and I'm like, so you gotta twist and punch? Like she was like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and it was like super choppy sound, like in one motion. When you're
yeah,
skating, you go in one motion, right? It's the same
yeah.
thing when you're punching, one motion.
Yeah.
And
Well,
she's like, there's so much technique in actually throwing a punch or something. And I'm like, yeah,
yeah.
like it's
Uh-huh.
the
And there's
oldest sport out there. So
yeah, I would say something like a nice cobra punch or nice Superman punch, right?
yeah,
And they casual viewers were like, "What? What did you say?" And it's like, "Oh, that's called a Superman punch." Like some like boom. There's like a Superman style of punch, right? Um, or like fireman's carry, because like when you go under a person and you
and
grab
then you
like
like
the
pick
John
them
Cena,
up and like this,
the John Cena grab, like, and then you kind of like flip them and then kind of
and like
pull them.
flip them over like that or toss them over
Yeah, it's
forward.
called like the fireman's carry, right? But
Yeah,
then people don't know what a fireman's carry is. So, and even in professional wrestling too, when I say something like, nice way to put the sleeper on, or nice, drop toe hold, or nice drop kick. It's like, wait, what? So it's like, yeah, like, or nice way to say nice cutoff or something like that, because it's like they don't know these terms, and it's like, oh, like that's what it's called. It's like, yeah, that's what it's called. So you kind of like, I sort of cab, because I say it so calmly. It's like nice uppercut. It's like, or nice cobra punch. It gets very, it's like, they kind of like, what did you say?
yeah, and like I just think it's a lot of people just because there's a taboo about it. I actually discussed this in my episode with
Yeah,
Carl quite a bit
yeah,
about the taboo.
yeah,
But just because a lot of people have a taboo about it, they can't with like baseball, soccer, or something. Yeah, you can estimate how far you can kick or something, or you can estimate how far another person can kick. But with fighting, if you've never been punched, you cannot
yeah,
feel like you cannot estimate what it would feel like
yes, yes, and
to get punched. And like that's one thing that one of my friends was
yeah.
saw. I think it was Sumit actually.
Mhm.
One of my friends was too light to hold the pad for me, so I asked
Yeah,
Sumit to hold the pad for me, and this guy, and I gave it, and he was like standing like super flimsy like this. And I'm like, stand straight. I kick hard. And he's like, how hard can you kick? I kicked him, and this guy was like kept on flying a few feet back, and like had to like reposition himself. And I'm like,
yeah. So is it the thing that you, what do you call that?
it's a
The,
pad.
the pad, right? The kick,
Yeah,
where
yeah, the
you
kick pad.
you have to stand still. What are you doing?
Yeah,
Like,
you
you
have
have
to
to
like
stand still.
stand like this, put all your
Yeah, yeah,
force
yeah,
on it like this,
yeah. Because
and
in
because
My Muay Thai training, you have to, like, my coach taught me how to hold it, right? Like, this is how you hold it, and like even with the pads with
yeah,
the boxing,
so you have to hold it tight, and like you never want to hold it like out like flimsy like
boost
that. You always want to keep it in slightly,
in
and you want
slightly.
to like
You don't
hit
want
because
to
if you leave
boom,
it flimsy like that and it goes back, you can hurt your trap here. So
and
you
like
want to
how,
like move it
yeah.
forward into the punch.
Yeah, and even how you like practice certain things, like you want to also like training somebody at the same time. I saw somebody like, and on a campus, like a rock campus, or like, oh, punch your stress out, and then she's holding it really light. I'm like, no, don't. I actually like legit went there. I'm like, you're holding it too soft. It's like, be boom, like don't take up something without expertise, that is, just because you think it's easy or it looks easy on television or pay-per-view does not mean it's,
Yeah, and
probably
like
harder than it looks.
and then he's like, "Why?" I remember I got asked, "Why are you holding it so flimsy, and why can't I hold it flimsy?" And I'm like, "I weigh 60 pounds more than you.
Yeah,
You need to put 60 pounds more force to push me back.
yes, exactly,
And
yeah,
you never kicked anyone, so I doubt you can even put a quarter of the pressure I
yeah,
put
yeah,
or force I put when I kick."
yeah, yeah. So I think, it's just when you're introducing someone to new any combat sport, for example. I'll use the umbrella term combat sport, because I think there is the stigma that, you know, it's easier than it looks. Sure, the method can be simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple. The formula is simple. Like even with
It's just as
striking,
simple as hitting a baseball.
yeah, it's like the formula is simple. For example, like even with striking, there's the one like this jab cross, the main core, and that's where you build it up. But because it's so simple, but it's also hard because you kind of want to know how to, work around that. And even with kicks too, like they look simple, but they're not easy. They're not easy kicks because you're spending hours and hours in your dojo, like perfecting your art. So, and you also want to, you're expecting not only to kick the bejesus out of somebody, but you're also getting the bejesus gonna getting your brain kicked out of you.
Yeah,
You
like
have to expect that you're gonna get the brain kicked out of you as well.
yeah,
I'm trying
cause
not to use bad words here because of YouTube bots.
yeah, like I remember the worst thing I've seen is a femur dislocation right at the
Yes.
pelvic joint
Yes.
because of a Taekwondo fighter who doesn't even have a black belt compared to a Muay Thai guy who does have a black belt.
Ooh.
Just because of underestimation, and it's basically roundhouse kick from Taekwondo guy being blocked by a knee or shin block,
Yes.
and
Yes.
the force from the roundhouse kick popped the femur out of the pelvic bone. That's one of the worst accidents I've seen, and it's
there's there's even like I think that reminded me of an incident with Dr. David Schultz and John Stossel, the reporter.
yeah,
John Stossel, the reporter, in an interview, is like, I think this is fake. So Dr. David Schultz, a professional wrestler, he gave him an open hand slap. He's like, is that fake to you? He slapped him a few times. It's like, is that fake to you? John Stossel didn't have any injuries by the doctors on the spot, but because the doctor was his brother, another doctor we went to, he's like, oh, I suffered like ear injury. It's like, you provoked the guy to by calling his art fake. You tried to like act like you're better than him, and it's he gave you the lesson that you wanted. It's kind of like oddly satisfying that when like reporters try to like poke at you, and it's like it's like, oh, this is easy stuff, and then even like certain comments like, oh, the boxing glove is like pillows or something. It's like, no,
no,
that's,
it's not there to protect me. It's
it's
there to
not
protect. It's not
just
there to protect you. It's there to protect me.
yeah, it's there to
And
protect the fist. That's
yeah,
it. That's all it's made to do. So if you're gonna get hit by a boxing glove, like yeah, do not underestimate. Just because a lot of fighters can do certain things doesn't mean it's easy. It's
yeah,
simple, like the technique, but it's hard. It's
yeah.
definitely
And like I think both was experienced one person. I think Alex, the female friend that we know,
yeah,
she's like, oh, she looked at me and she's like, your arms are small. You can't punch me hard enough. So
yeah,
I'm like, I think I should punch Mustafa first.
yeah. I remember that. I remember that. It's like, oh, don't like, just
She
don't.
was like, come, like she asked me like 2 or 3 times, like, how hard can it be?
Yeah,
And like the thing is, she got pissed and she started hitting me for a few times. And
yeah,
like the thing is, she, she's a skinny, lanky little girl, and like it's not gonna hurt me if
yeah.
she punches me. But and then she's like, it doesn't hurt you, punch me back. And I'm like, no, thank you.
Don't ask me to punch you back. Do not, because
I
when
don't
you
want to
know
get arrested.
your strength, like your strength, and the reason you punch me is because I can take it.
Yeah,
I know, and even though you didn't put full force, because it's a public location, right?
yeah,
It's a public location. It's not a
yeah,
dojo. And even then, like I know that your tricep is big. Like because I've also done lifting. Like with lifting, you kind of notice the tricep and certain muscles that matter, not the
yeah,
bicep, but the tricep size, as well as like the forearm size. You
yeah,
kind of notice like you don't have small arms. I guarantee you, you do not have small arms. You have 75% of your arm strength right here. And
yeah.
definitely see that you probably have good punching power, and
Yeah.
you can even show off your tricep right there. So
Yeah.
you have a bigger tricep than your bicep, and because you have more padding on, like it's easy to underestimate you. But a lot of people are ignorant that this padding is subcutaneous fat. This is not visceral fat. This is not the lazy man fat. This is what you call I would say the sumo wrestler, or the wrestler fat, or the power lifter fat.
Yeah.
That it's there for a reason. It's there for a
Yeah.
reason. Like, you're like, it doesn't mean that you're less of a tough guy. It's just you have that padding. That padding works to your advantage. You know.
Yeah. And like I think I spooked Alex that day when I punched you. It was a public area and
Yeah,
I didn't want to get in trouble, so I gave you a light love tap.
yeah,
But like you and the chair shook. And I
yeah.
think I spooked Alex that day.
No, it's yeah, because I know, like, you basically, this is, you're not a small guy by
Yeah.
any means necessary, and you work because you lift for power. And I kind of combine conditioning and power. I
Yeah.
know that you're more powerful compared to me. That is,
Yeah.
you are probably more powerful compared to me. So I knew that, like, I'm more, but I can still take it because I've also
Yeah.
had similar training. I can
Yeah.
take it. So, like someone like, our dear friend's physique, with no training, again, with zero training, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah,
You
I
really
don't
don't
even
stand.
think she lifted her backpack without help.
I mean,
Not
like,
trashing Alex, but like, let's just say she's not the pro athlete that we know.
no, she's not a poor athlete by any means, but like, like, it's, yeah, it's,
Bend with the knees and pick up that
not,
TD.
not you're not a fighter. That is, you're not a
Yeah,
trained fighter, quote unquote. So yeah, also I'm showing off my arms, guys. Showing off my arms too. So yeah, but yeah, like, we went on so many tangents basically. We started from like USC, and then what we covered today was, we talked about MMA fighters as well as professional wrestlers, and like combining, like, there are so many notable fighters that were both professional wrestlers and MMA fighters, and there's a long list. We'll have a link set up in the description, and you can, like, check out that list as well. Their fight records are on there as well. Sure, it's a Wikipedia, but you can also verify Wikipedia sources as well at the same time.
yeah,
And just, it's a very quick look basically. And you want to, uh, and mind you, this is from a perspective of myself, who's a promoter, who's worked on the side, some training of wrestling, but mainly I've been a promoter. That is, mostly that's my career. That is, so I'm more on the observant side. So in all fairness, it's it's a different perspective, but it's a business ish, like, from what the business is like, kind of perspective. That is. So yeah. Do you have any other questions, Nick?
So far from me, no.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the point that I just want to add that both fields are requiring of skills,
Skills,
but
yeah.
it's unique to that specific field.
Yes.
Um, the transition is okay, somewhat similar,
Once in a while, yeah. Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, transition is a bit, it depends on the,
on the person.
yes,
Because a kickboxing guy's not gonna have the wrestling know how to do pull like if you know nothing but Muay Thai, you're not gonna be able to pull a full suplex on someone.
exactly,
You're
yeah.
gonna base it off of what you see in your movies. You're gonna get behind the guy and you're gonna try to like flip him over you. When you know that a suplex is gonna gotta go from the side, you gotta twist from the power line
Mm-hmm.
and
No,
like trip
there,
him if you're yeah
that's different kinds of suplexes. There's the
yeah
German suplex, there's, you call the vertical suplex, there's the
yeah.
belly to
But
belly
I like
suplex.
I'm saying like for in terms of like just the Thai kickboxer not knowing just gonna like try to pick up the guy from around, put his arms around like the dude's pecs and like try to lift him
Mhm.
up.
Yes, yes.
But like not knowing like the anatomy of this is the power line, you have to get this low,
Yeah,
you have to like he just
yeah,
doesn't have that perfection of the art.
absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yeah. Uh, So I think this is where we'll be kind of exhausted. I know we could go on forever, honestly. We could go
Yeah,
on forever about
but
this,
yeah,
but
the audience probably doesn't want to hear my
uh,
voice too much.
and
But
that and the toilet paper thrown is probably like, getting on a few nerves right there.
yeah,
I
so
love
yeah,
poking fun at that toilet paper thrown.
but yeah, guys. I'm officially a YouTuber now, so please click the link below. Subscribe, like,
That's
leave a
funny.
comment. We love you. What else do YouTubers say? Buy my drugs. Never mind.
And subscribe, like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, we're two Indian guys, or two Desi guys asking you to subscribe.
uh, and milk truck just arrived.
All right, take care, guys. See you
Take
next
care, guys.
episode.